So episode 14 of the Inside Battlefield podcast just came out last week, and I wanted to break it down for you guys today. It was actually super interesting. They went into a lot of detail about the kind of behind the scenes of making Battlefield, or continuing development on the live service, and essentially why it takes so long to put out fixes and changes and stuff like that. So I wanted to break that down for you guys today. They do obviously do a weekly, or pretty much weekly or fortnightly podcast depending on what's coming in the live service of Battlefield 2042, but these are regular podcasts by the development team. So if you guys want me to do this for pretty much every one of these podcasts and break down all the news so you don't have to sort of listen to an hour-long podcast to get all the information, be sure to let me know down in the comments. I listen to them anyway, so if you guys want me to do almost like little news videos on each of the podcasts, be sure to let me know and I'll definitely start doing that in the future. Now anyway, in episode 14, Tom, or Stratford as most of you guys probably know him, sat down with 3 other developers from different departments of the Battlefield 2042 team to pretty much discuss the behind the scenes of working on Battlefield 2042 that us as players don't really get to see. This is something that for me personally, I've always really wanted to sort of hear more about. I love behind the scenes type of stuff, especially when it comes to gaming, because it is such a secretive type of industry where they don't really talk about this stuff all that often. I don't know why, but that is something that industry wide is really an issue that kind of keeps players on the outside, and we don't really know how these games and stuff are actually made. So this episode in particular was really fascinating, and there was definitely a lot of stuff that I learned about the game. The first thing they kind of went over is that not all the fixes that actually happen to the game get announced. So for example, we obviously know we get the monthly updates as well as often a fortnightly update, which is more of like a bug fix type update. So for example, there was update 5.0.0 that came out, and that is the launch of season 5 obviously, but then just this week there is 5.0.1, which is the kind of in between update, and then the next one will be 5.1.0. so those are the updates that we obviously know about. They actually mentioned that a lot of stuff does get changed on the back end that we actually never find out about. They don't announce it anywhere unless it's obviously something massive, and we don't actually have to download an update because these are done on the back end. So essentially it's done server side. They don't need to release a actual patch for us to download, and therefore things are actually changing every single week in this game that none of us actually really notice, because a lot of this stuff is a lot smaller. One of the examples they used, and this is funny because I actually said this in my review for the map, that I didn't think the ticket count for Reclaimed was high enough. It felt like games were running really quickly. Well, just last week they actually put out a server-side patch that pretty much upped the ticket count on Reclaimed, and they didn't say anything about it. So if you guys go and play Reclaimed right now, the tickets are actually going to be higher than what they were last week, and like I said, they never actually posted that anywhere. It wasn't on Twitter. There was no patch to download with patch notes saying that that was going to be happening. So I found that really interesting. I didn't actually know that many changes were happening, and that's just one example. There's obviously many of those per week that a lot of us are actually never even noticing because they don't actually announce them. The reason they said they don't announce them is because essentially they want us to pretty much never notice any of these changes, and that's not to hide it from us or anything like that. It's because the best user experience is when you don't notice any changes, unless, like I said, they are massive changes where they will be putting out a proper update that we need to download. But all the small little changes that aren't really that drastic, it is actually better for players to not even notice that and just have the game starting to feel better for no apparent reason, pretty much. Something else they mentioned that I had absolutely no idea about is that the updates they are pushing out in terms of the ones we download, they pretty much have to be ready a week before they go live. So for example, like I said, update 5.0.0, that is the season 5 launch. 1 week after that goes live, they have to have finished the next patch, which is update 5.0.1, that goes out the week after. So they don't actually have 2 weeks to get all of those fixes in place. They pretty much have 1 single week to get all of the fixes they need from the season 5 launch and put that out 2 weeks later. Now the reason they have to get it ready a week before it goes live is because there are so many different approvals they have to go through. There's people internally at DICE that they have to cross-check all of the changes with and stuff like that. But then even on the platforms it's launching on, for example on Xbox and with Sony on the PlayStation 5, they actually have to pretty much send these changes to the teams so that they can verify everything's fine, because obviously anything that Sony or Microsoft are going to be putting on their store, they want to make sure that it is something they have verified too. So they not only have to verify all the changes within DICE itself, and then no doubt probably EA as well, but they have to then send that to Microsoft, Sony, probably the people behind Steam and all that kind of thing. So that is something that I think a lot of people don't really know too much about. The only reason I know that is because the same thing happened with Battlefront 2. They kind of talked about the same thing there. So that's the only reason I know it, but it is pretty easy to forget that there are so many approvals. They can't just make a fix and upload it that day for us to download. That's not really how it works. And so that means when there is a fix fix coming out, if it doesn't have something that, you know, has popped up during the week where there's a new bug that's come out on a Tuesday, for example, and then that Friday there's a patch and it doesn't fix that issue from Tuesday, us as players kind of go, what the hell, why are you doing a patch and this thing isn't fixed? The reason being, the patch that we download on the Friday was actually ready by the Friday before we downloaded it, if that makes sense. So that is very interesting, and it's definitely a pretty good explanation as to why there's oftentimes, for example, recently with the RM68, that actually was not patched in the Season 5 update. It had to be done in the second one, as in 5.0.1, because simply put, it wasn't ready for Season 5 because it needed to be ready a week earlier. So hopefully that kind of puts into perspective why some of these patches take so long to be done. And for example, there'll be a patch, but it doesn't fix half the things that we're complaining about. That is pretty much an explanation right there as to why that is the case. Now, the final thing that I thought was very interesting, and this is potentially going to be amazing, maybe not so much for this game, but I do think for the next Battlefield game, is that they're actually working on tech, and they've kind of been working on it in the background with this game as well. So they've actually made some of these changes on the fly, where they can actually tweak weapon balancing on the back end, which would mean that they can actually change the balancing of weapons without us needing to actually download a patch. So for example, again with the RM68, it's been absolutely terrorizing Battlefield since it launched in Season 4, and so instead of needing that verification and approval process and it taking weeks if not months to get a patch out to fix the RM68, they could, pretty similar to how they kill switched Dozer's shield in the first week of launch, they could just do that with the weapon for a day or two, fix it, and then literally just upload it back to the game in its new form, as in its balanced form, without us ever even having to download anything. One day you'll log into the game and the gun might not be there because they're working on it, and then the next day you log into the game without having downloaded anything and the gun is back and it's been balanced. So that right there will be absolutely insane. I personally am not too sure I've ever played a game, at least a multiplayer game anyway, where that has been possible. I could be wrong, but I don't believe like Call of Duty or any of those type of games are able to do that either. And so when that becomes available, that is going to be absolutely mental. The fact that they can pretty much balance the game on the fly, we don't have to wait for, you know, the next patch in a month. It could literally be fixed almost like daily, and that right there will be absolutely overpowered. So I found that to be very interesting. They said they do not have like the ability to do it yet with weapons. That said, they have actually already done this with stuff like the grenade launcher in the assault class. They actually reduced its blast radius on the fly. They didn't have any patch for that actual fix. I think they said they've reduced it by 30%, and one, we never downloaded a patch for it, and two, I don't believe they even ever said that that was happening. They just fixed it, and then us as players continued playing the game, and as far as I know, no one even noticed that was changed. I definitely didn't notice it myself, and I kind of get their point that they were getting at earlier. It is kind of nice when the game just feels as though it's fixed and they don't have to explain every single change to us. So I know some people will have issues with that, why they're not telling us all the fixes. I personally do prefer when they just actually put out patch notes and say what has changed, just because I think the more information the better. But in this instance, they fixed certain things in the game, didn't tell us, and for me that grenade launcher hasn't been an issue. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I don't know when the actual ability to do that with proper weapons is going to be done. I don't know if it'll be done within Battlefield 2042's lifespan, but it is pretty crazy to think about nonetheless. And even if it takes all the way until the next Battlefield game, that is going to be an awesome addition, and I cannot wait to see more. But that was pretty much the general gist of episode 14 of the Inside Battlefield podcast. Like I said, guys, if you guys do want to see pretty much weekly or fortnightly, just whenever they do one of these podcasts, me breaking it down and giving you all the info without taking an hour to do so, be sure to let me know down in the comments. Like I said, I listen to them anyway. If that is something you guys want to see, then I can definitely start making those type of videos. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.